Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you are doing great. So the objective of today's video is to know very clearly the inherent meaning of the poem named A Late Walk. This is a short little poem coming from the pen of Robert Frost, who is a well-known American poet, highly regarded for his realistic depiction of rural life. Now without any further delay, let's get to know this piece of work. Let's begin by getting some factual details about the poem. A Late Walk is a part of Robert Frost's first successful poetry collection titled A Boy's Will. So, this is the poem A Late Walk. First, it had its appearance in A Little Boy's Will that was published in 1915. Bringing some historical context points to us that Robert Frost moved to America from England due to World War I. Means, before he began to write the poem, he was in America, and reason for him being in America was World War I. Next, the theme of Boy's Will poetry collection is isolation and sadness. This says, given the background of war that was hanging around almost all over the globe, its sadness was felt by Robert Frost. And through his poem, he is trying to convey his own sadness, his own depression, his own isolation in an unfamiliar place like America. And if the war was not supposedly to happen, then the context of this poem would have been different altogether. So, in the context, this work sounds to be autobiographical in nature as well. Then the poem as well does a strong analysis of an observation that many feel at some point in their life. This says, the poem observes how a person would feel when there is an atmosphere of war around. You may relate this more in the context of Russia-Ukraine conflict, as it's the latest example of war in the 21st century. We saw through social media how horrible destruction that Russia has done upon the Ukrainians. Obviously, we do not have the ground or the actual experience, but we do got the sense of suffering to see those destruction through internet. So, in this context, the poem openly discusses how it feels when the days are short, winds are cold and isolation is felt. Having set the background, let's read the poem and understand what it's trying to convey to the common readers. I read you the poem. When I go through the mowing field, the headless aftermath, smooth laid like thatch with heavy dew, half closes the garden path. This line provides us information regarding narrator, who is out of his home in the evening. Though the evening is not explicitly mentioned here, but the imagery and the title itself makes one to believe it is an evening. So, the narrator is walking through a mowing field, where mowing field refers to a surface of land that is recently been cut or harvested. This is because he mentions afterwards the headless aftermaths. This means when the crops are cut, they are pulled out of their root, which was earlier their body. This image also makes the depiction of nature sounding dead. And now, when the narrator is walking around, he sees the leftovers of crop, calling it headless aftermath. Then, smooth laid like thatch with heavy dew half closes the garden path. Means, the leftover of the crops, the thatch-like structure, which means the stem-like structure, are present so much so that it is blocking his way towards garden. This stanza also tells about lot of imagery used by poet while writing the poem. And given this context, the sense of autumn is felt. That is the period after the summer and before the winter, usually in and around September to November, is very much coming before us. Further it reads, and when I come to the garden ground, the whir of sober birds, up from the tangle of withered weeds, is sadder than my words. Here, narrator tells after crossing through the field, he is now reached the garden. And he very peacefully observes his surrounding, how the trees' leaves are falling, as it is the autumn season that I mentioned earlier. So, he sees how the garden that was once beautiful is now twisted and cracked, and a sense of sadness is felt by him. Then he hears the whir of sober field, where whir means sound and sober birds means birds who are serious and sad in their attitude. So, in this context, the narrator hears the sound that reflects the sadness of the birds, and he notices it coming from the tangled weeds. See this over here, you can relate this. Now, weeds means unnecessary plant which grow along the main plants. So, the birds are over these weeds, which are again in not proper shape. The wind has made it tangled, that is twisted, with many other weeds, and birds prefer to be there and make their sound. And this sound is such that it makes the narrator to feel the sound being more sadder than what he expresses through his words. Means, more than his words, he considers the sounds of unspeakable birds to be sad. The poem then reads, "A tree beside the wall stand bare, but a leaf that lingered brown, disturbed, I doubt not, by my thought, comes softly rattling down." Here, narrator is continuing his practice of observation. He continues to explore what he sees, and among this is a single tree. As he says, "A tree beside the wall stands bare, but a leaf that lingered brown." Here, lingered brown means hanging or waiting, and this line means that a single tree is around a wall that has no leaf except this brown leaf, that is lingering or hanging. You can more relate this through this image. Then he says, "Disturbed I doubt not, by my thought, come softly rattling down." This tells that there was a sense in which the tree, that particular tree whom narrator was observing, understood that narrator is watching it, because of which it got disturbed, and narrator finds no doubt of it getting disturbed by him. As a result, the last brown lingering leaf also opened its hand and came down from the top of the tree to the ground. And this overall sadness everywhere is really paining the narrator, but he quietly makes just an observation and feels how his emotions are connected with the environment. Further, "I end not far from my going forth by picking the faded blue of the last remaining aster flower to carry again to you." In this last remaining lines of this last stanza, narrator is expressing his tiredness to experience this spreaded sorrow. He does not wish to go any more further, though he sees a last aster flower or a blue daisy flower lying on the ground. He dare not to pick the flower, even if the flower was to be carried to an unknown individual. This individual is not named by poet, but we can assume to relate it with a lover or a friend. So even at the end, a sad mood is reflected, and it ends with the mysterious "you" that leaves many readers very curious. And also it is doubtful whether the sadness is coming from within, and therefore it is not sure whether it is a happy ending. Now that we have come across the poem, it's important to mention the rhyme scheme. So the rhyme scheme of the poem is ABCB. This particular rhyme lends a more sad or serious atmosphere to the poem, and also reflects the thoughtful, contemplative state of mind of the poet. Therefore, it is nature where we find the deepest feeling and express our most abstract concepts. Having said this, let's wrap up today's video. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to see you in the next one.